Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
Data inaccurate. Does not compute. Does not compute.
If you recognize that paranoid robot and his iconic danger notification from the TV series Lost in Space, then you've just outed your age, which is probably pretty close to mine given we used to watch that corny TV show as kids and we loved it. I thought of it while I was interviewing today's guest about how we can overcome the danger of digital distraction with our stories. Because how often have you painstakingly crafted a communication that just didn't compute with your audience? Are the bots against us, drowning us out both online and in person? And if so, how can we prevail? Hello there, I'm Park Howell, and I'm so glad you're joining us today for this special digital distraction edition of the Business of Story with our terrific guest, Julienne Ryan. She is going to show you how to humanize your in-person storytelling chops to overcome the constant digital destruction of our attention that we all battle daily. But you might be feeling frustrated and confused about how to connect with your continuously disconnected audiences. We'll show you how to hack through the noise and hook the hearts of the Will Robinsons in your life. The Lost in Space TV show was a marvel to campiness. I love this dialogue in Season 1, Episode 20, called War of the Robots, between the robot and his arch-nemesis, Robotoid. How many of these kinds of one-on-ones have you been part of?
It is time we talk.
Proceed.
Now that I have full operational capabilities, your services will no longer be required.
I am needed by the Robinsons. I was also here first.
The Robinsons prefer me. In a short while, I will be indispensable to them, while you will be relegated to the role of an inactive bystander.
You are mistaken. Your efforts will be denied by me.
You are even more stupid than I first computed. My path
I know
is
it's
clear.
dated and laughable, but listen to how much funnier it gets when I insert a laugh track.
Concept.
My programming has been extensive. My memory banks contain much knowledge.
In comparison to myself, you are very ignorant. In a short while, I will be indispensable to them, while you will be relegated to the role of an inactive bystander.
You are mistaken. Your efforts will be denied by me.
You are even more stupid than I first computed.
You will be stopped.
I can destroy you easily, foolish, sad machine. There can be no fight between us. It would not be a contest. You need a small demonstration of my power. A small reminder of what is in store for you if I am provoked.
See how a little humor in those difficult robotic conversations can go a long way to connect with your audience? Well, I guess it's a good thing we have a humorist with us today who's going to show you how to humanize that corporate robot in you to combat the robotoid of the digital world we all compete in. And it starts by rewriting the script that's running between your ears.
Figuring out who's writing the script in your head. Is it an elder that really judged you and criticized and used sarcasm to you? And pay attention who's writing the script, because it's gonna impact how we're listening to somebody and receiving information. And if you know you're going into a certain dynamic in a room with people that you've met before and you're going to be judging, what about preparing for a while and saying, what if I approached it differently? Change the ending, not write the script before I get there. Now, anybody listening could say, oh, that sounds so easy. It's not. It is truly not. But create a storyline, write it down, even a few bullets, and then saying, what if I approached this differently? What if I looked for the good? What if I got curious and asked why?
Julienne Ryan grew up in Queens, having 3 communication choices: be funny, fight, or run really fast. She is author of the popular I Learned It in Queens Communications Playbook, a book that teaches how to win the day against digital distraction. Julienne is an organizational storyteller, keynote speaker, and soft skills trainer. She thanks the faculty at Manhattan College, where she received her BA in Psychology and Urban Studies, and the Teachers College at Columbia University, where she earned her master's in organizational and development leadership for helping her become a sought-after coach and facilitator. She collaborates with motivated managers who recognize their teams have unrealized potential and want to help them to get out of their own way. They understand that effective communication habits is a wellness exercise that will take their team's working relationships from stuck to productive. Today, you'll learn some of her 8 steps to overcoming current communication-mutant challenges, as she calls them, which is spawned by the digital universe we all float around in. She believes that our best stories are hiding in plain sight, and we just have to learn how to listen for them and learn how to appreciate them. So let's start revealing some of your stories right now with Julienne Ryan. Hello, Julienne, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here. So thanks for the invitation, Mark. It's wonderful to see you again.
Well, I'm so happy we finally connected. I follow you on LinkedIn, and we have communicated quite a bit there. I love your book, your style, your presentation, and speaking, writing, and storytelling style, and it's just really fun to have you here at the Business of Story. And we are going to talk today about what you learned growing up in Queens that we can all use to get through this digital distraction and actually try to get people's attention. I don't even know if that's possible.
Oh, I know. It's a big list. We only have so much time together today. So,
Well, a lot of your tips are very practical, and we're going to go through some of them. I don't want to go through all of them because I think people should pick up your book. It's a quick, fun read. I love your images in it and so forth. One thing struck me about it, Julienne. Is it too late for some of our younger professionals, those that have grown up with a digital device in their hands and their brain is already so hardwired into nose down, digital device up? I can't talk to you. I can't look you in the eye. I'm not comfortable chatting with you one-on-one because it's just not how I grew up.
I think it's possible. You have to ease in. First of all, I have a hidden advantage. I'm married to an Irishman. So that was a training academy in itself. And what that relationship taught me, as well as my experience in Queens, is you do it in small things. You can't expect anybody to have a conversation and trust you, engage with you for a lengthy period of time. So you look for small moments. You catch people, in small moments and just appreciate something about them. So it could be just a compliment, a comment, something you share in common. So go for the small wins, whether it's a young person, an older person, look for something you can connect with. It's easy as pie.
Well, you have made a very successful career out of coaching people and helping them with their quote unquote soft skills. I love that term, soft skills. It's such a misnomer. The intellects of our world dismiss soft skills because you can't measure them, but it's things like communication, relationships, interaction. That is the hardest thing to do in the world if you are uncomfortable with it and don't actually know how to do it. So to me, it's the extremely hard skills, not the hard skills, the soft skills, but you've done it. Give us your background, your backstory, if you would, Julienne, on how you find yourself where you are today.
I am my own customer. I grew up as a shy kid in a multicultural area. I spoke with a little bit of a European accent because of my mother and my parents. And then I went to school and I did more observing and paying attention than speaking. So I literally had to train myself at one point to say, look, if I'm going to be a teenager and be successful in school, I have to start learning how to ask questions and be curious. So asking questions is another tool you can use if you're not comfortable with one to one because it just shows an interest. So
Mhm.
who know years later I'd be in HR using that for an actual skill set and listening. The other thing was humor sometimes, just not making fun of something even about ourselves and appreciating the small moments that we think are glaring that go wrong. And I think that was a big lesson along the time because it has certain amount of relatability and approachability. Secondly, the thing we think are so glaringly tough that we're making a mistake, nobody worries about it. No one's hanging on to everything. They're more interested in how you made them feel, if you paid attention, if that other individual felt seen, heard, and listened to. Now, you asked me a question. I haven't forgotten the original question that how did you get into this line of business? So I went HR, recruiting, training, and using humor in my workshops, but to be honest, I never fully appreciated it. I thought, okay, when I'm a grown-up adult and fully mature and informed, I'll be all left brain. I will speak in PowerPoint bullets, and I will not smile. And then one day I started to listen and ask people for feedback about where I brought more value in my work. And lo and behold, nobody got excited about my reports. Nobody cared, they about the things I solved. They said you showed up, you listened, and you made us laugh. And sometimes on those days, it made all the difference. And in addition, here's a big point. We were learning as we were laughing. And it made a situation of trust. So it's like it's like one of those science fiction movies when you fill out your whole body and you're like, you see that creature like filling in. I started to use the humor and study storytelling for real. Because up to that point, I was using because I had no budget in my work to say, like, how can you build rapport? At least let me tell you a story, let me understand something. But the more I studied the science and the trust building, the more I knew this was something very important. So, what I thought was a vulnerability in the beginning, I'm shy, I'm listening, I'm asking questions, ended up being something I could leverage later on because I had trained myself to pay attention to others. And we could all do a bit of that. Not perfect by no means of shay, but it takes practice. And I think you asked later, we think it doesn't, there's no instant. You got to do a little bit every day and teach yourself to develop some confidence
Yeah.
about reaching out to people.
And what do you do now? Now, in your book, you talked about growing up in Queens, and then you couldn't wait to get out of Queens, and you moved
Yes.
into the big city, and you learned a lot about yourself, and you went, to university, and then what, moved to Westchester County, I think?
Yes, I did. I
You're
went
out.
all posh.
Okay. So what is it that you do for folks?
I coach people. I coach them on their professional development, and I also go in and build teams. So I will go in and use the narrative and personal storytelling exercises when people are a little stuck in their communications and how they're communicating with each other or what they're not seeing about what their benefits of that team person is. And I go and have a very constructive exercises that helps to build a foundation. You can't have tough conversations or really get into the meat of issues that need to be discussed if you don't have some rapport and trust. And the good news about this, the last few years, we've had to learn to do this on Zoom as well as in person. So it's all possible. And then I do some keynotes where I actually get up in front of a group and talk to them and make them laugh. And that's how the book came to be. It was a speech that I had to give
Hmm.
about communications. And when I learned that I was going to be speaking to 500 people instead of 100, which would have been a reasonable number in my head, I freaked out because I thought, "Oh my god, they're gonna hear my accent. They're gonna see the short little woman. They're gonna say, 'Why are you here? Who are you to tell us what to do?'" And then a little voice in my head just said, the only thing you could do is show up and be yourself. And that was the best gift I gave to myself. I learn every day something new, but I'm playing it forward to everybody else too. The thing we think is our weakness sometimes can be our strength if we play it right.
Absolutely. Was that the first time you were on stage in front of a large group?
No, I played conference rooms where people were ready to run away from me a lot of times in HR situation. I was doing talks, I was doing Kate, but 500 is a different level of intimacy. Those are a lot of eyeballs to try to get them to look up, and they were all senior level people. And they
Mhm.
were in love with technology, and I want to complain about it. So that was kind of an act of bravery on my part. So
Well, there's a really fascinating New York study out there, or study from Harvard, I think it is, that said this whole digital divide thing, distraction thing, where they brought in different classes to take the exact same tests, and one cohort could have their iPhone in there with them, and the other cohort could not. And they did this test over and over again. And the cohort that had a digital device, an iPhone, an iPad, or whatever with them, scored 20% lower
ah,
than those that did not have that little device sitting next to them. It's like that limbic subconscious brain is constantly checking to see if you've got notifications. We got to jump on it. Well, you were trying to process through that executive functioning brain, and guess what's getting, derailed? Your
it's
intellect.
so true.
Yeah.
It's so true, and we're all guilty of it because we have instant messaging. Something's pinging. I've taken everything I can unplug today to talk to you out of commission for the moment. I just have to remember to put it all back together lately. But we read things quickly. I mean, I'm as guilty of you. I've read something from my brother this morning in a text, and I missed part of the thing because I was too busy getting prepared, and I had to double back and say, "Oh, I'm in trouble." And then once you have an older brother, you always have an older brother. So now I read the rest of your comments. So we all have to take a moment and be a little patient. And then if somebody else screws up, give them a pass and have them have a chance to do what I call in New York was a do-over. You get to try again. Make right by your mistake and then own up to it if you're the one who made that
That's
mistake too.
only fair. You had mentioned
Yes.
earlier about some of your storytelling exercises that you do. Could you share one or two of those with us?
I love food. I always think that's a great thing to start. There's something we all have, a favorite recipe or favorite meal, and I find that it relaxes people. And they can sit there and visualize the story and just explain like how it came into their life and why how it shows up now. So you can't go wrong by food. And if you bring food to event I'm doing, you are my favorite client by a long shot.
So, I mean, do you actually ask people, like, what is your favorite food and why? And get them to
Yes,
tell
of
that story
course.
to build that connection? So, mine is, since you didn't ask, I'll share with you.
Okay.
Spaghetti. I love spaghetti. My mom used to
Fabulous.
make the greatest spaghetti, and she's not Italian. She just was a hardworking, wonderful mother who, by the way, turned 99 on April 5th. So she is
Bravo.
doing phenomenal, raised seven of
Bravo.
us kids. And we grew up in Seattle. My father was a Depression era guy, did very well for himself as a civil engineer, but we were brought up very much on that Depression era, can do mentality and frugality and whatever. And my mom just made this spaghetti that was so delicious. It was my go to comfort food. Now, here's the deal, Julianne. So there were
Yes.
seven of us kids. Every time we had a birthday, the birthday kid got to claim, what are we going to have for dinner? And they would always
Mm.
say steak because we never had steak ever. And so when it would come down to me, I would call spaghetti. And they would
Ah.
come in and use and abuse me, say, no, you got to have steak. We never have steak. We can have spaghetti anytime. And I'm like, nope, I love spaghetti. That's my go
Oh,
to.
you and me. You know what it was when we had because we weren't Italian, we were Polish and Lithuanian. My mother was French born, and but spaghetti was first of all back then it was a vegetable free zone. Like that was one night I knew I'd be perfectly blissful, and even didn't even like sauce when I was a kid. I loved butter and cheese, and I was thrilled. But there's so many stories about pasta and stuff and
Yeah.
food. And that's actually the next book I want to write is and working on some stories about food and conversations and how that teaches us so many lessons
Yeah.
when we connect through food.
How else do you use storytelling in your training?
I use it to in my training when I do a lot of one-to-one to build confidence. And that's initially how I started. Before story was a word and a thing, I was already doing it in interviews to ask people how they maybe succeeded, something that really lit them up, or how they failed, which usually got some interesting looks and expressions. And I would share maybe an experience that I encountered as a new manager, etc. But what it did is it relaxed the person, and we could curate and pull out traits that were hiding in plain sight. And a lot of things that we think are no big deal is something that's very unique to us and a special skill. And the upside of doing the story work in interviews even was when I went to hire that person or I went to promote them or advocate for them later on, we had a deeper rapport and we had a better sense of what they were about. And they were memorable. And some even the people I wasn't able to hire became clients later on because it was the experience they had in the room when it's more intimate, it's deeper than just here's a couple of bullets and you're just reporting in facts. So it's a way of building trust and empathy and really having some fun in the meantime.
Yeah. And do you find when people first start telling you their story that it's a very generalized thing, this kind of happened, this, that you've got to kind of prod them to or encourage them to get to that moment? Take us to a moment in time and make us feel like we're sitting right alongside of you to hear that story. So they're actually reliving that moment, but you are also, as the interviewer, living it with them.
Yes, absolutely. And Park, that is the truth. So to give that person a bit of a courage to jump, because it is a moment of trust to be vulnerable and share something. Because when you're being vulnerable, you're sharing an emotional component in the way you're describing the situation. Because the reason you have this postcard image in your head is something happened that has fused fact and emotion into memory that stays with us. And I think I use an expression that I coined years ago, story tourism. When you start when you're using story, you're helping other people explore something and see it with a fresh eye and be vulnerable and travel like you do when you go on a vacation. You see how they farm, how they build their houses, what kind. If I went out west, I see there's more space, things are not as congested. And when we travel, we also see ourselves in a new way. So when we're discussing and using either a metaphor or a little story vignette, we are experience ourselves with a fresh eye and are using our whole brain and our whole way of listening, which is quite exciting and fun. But yeah, there's so many ways to use story, and I think it's a simple, free, great tool to use that's portable, and every culture uses this, as you know. So there's must be a reason it's still hanging out there with us.
Well, I mean, it was the very first technology we Homo sapiens used as cavemen and cave women to survive the savannah was storytelling. It wasn't fire, it wasn't the
Yes.
invention of the wheel. We needed to have stories to be able to invent fire and wheel and survive everything else. And truly, everything that we have done today in our miraculous inventions and technology and AI and putting men on the moon and stuff on Mars is all based on storytelling.
Yes.
It starts
Yes.
with a fictional account of here's what I think we could make happen, which is total fiction, and we are the only beings that we know of that plan, organize, and act in story and try to make
Yes.
that happen. So it's not new. This technology has
Mhm.
been around forever. But why, in your, you living and working in the big city of New York, you get to work with major organizations and very thoughtful leaders and whatever. Why do people park story on the sideline once they get inside the big corporate environment?
I think it's a cultural thing. I think we were trained to dial down our individual stuff, but I have to give us credit. It has been emerging a little bit more. I think we've been giving ourselves permissions in many environments to say this is a wellness tool. It's an engagement tool. It's a listening tool. Let's look at any manager that's really done a great job and has pulled their team together it usually has to do where they paid attention in the moment and they introduced the human part of elements to their work. Doesn't mean they've lowered the bar and expectation, but they saw people as individuals and people to be developed. So I do think we can do much more versus eradicating all the human bits. And I think we've come through a few lessons in the last few years of working in isolation and then creeping back into the office or finding some blended version of it. But the more we can give ourselves a little bit of moments, I think it's a healthier work environment. So thank you for that question.
Well, and like you say, it is a tool. People think of,
Mhm.
story time, that's all that woo-woo stuff. I read,
Yes.
stories to my kids to put them to bed at night, which I think is a big mistake. You probably shouldn't read stories to your kids. If you want them to go to sleep, you should probably show them your PowerPoint. Put that up in their room. Boom, you're good to go. Don't tell
Lights
them a
out.
story because that's going to get them excited. That PowerPoint's going to put them right out, right?
Oh my gosh. I think you have something, a patent, a technique. I think that's gonna be the another career shift for you. Like
That's my New Yorker
repurposing all
cartoon.
those PowerPoints you've had in the past, all the restructurings, et
You could,
cetera.
you could make a little app out of it, put a little projector in their room, and just start showing them PowerPoints. They're going to be out like in a minute. So,
Yes,
but
I
you
know.
you had a lot of fun with your book and pulled from that upbringing that at first you weren't crazy about, but then you came back and said, you know what, Queens is a pretty cool place. Let's go through some of your tips. And you've got 8 of them here. I'm not going to share them all today because I want people to go and get your excellent book. I'm going to start with one that you hear over and over and over and over and over again to the point that I'm wondering if it even lands anymore, and that is to keep it authentic. I had a guest on
Ye
yesterday that said, you got to be your authentic self. We always say that. Why
yes.
don't we do it?
Because we're afraid, I think, of being judged or we're holding to maybe some other's sense of value. But the
Hmm.
keep it authentic part I am gonna share, when I went to this speech and I hired somebody to be my art director, he sent me and I said, "Oh, come on, we need like a device for this big picture, not behind me on this mega screen." And he sends me a slice of pizza, and I'm like, "Well, how's that gonna work?" And then I got it. That was the most authentic New York thing that we were looking at, and that you show up, you fold it so you kind of keeping all your emotions together and not making a mess of things, and you can walk with it in New York. We're very organized people about making the most time with everything. So I think keep it authentic. It gets overused, but if you use it in the right way, it is about taking a risk, taking a moment to find somebody else's maybe simple truth that they want to share and being patient. So here's the thing about storytelling, Mark, and I know you know this. It's more about listening. Like right now, I'm talking, you're talking a lot, but when we're in a story mode, we're doing more listening. And the most exciting part of training ourselves to do that is to watch what happens when other people start to connect with each other. And that's when you know you're having a good story work session, when you're hearing things or their stories are coming out of people that normally wouldn't have talked to each other.
Yeah, it's so true. I was talking to one of our sons, and he was in the 8th grade. And you know how 8th grade boys start getting themselves in trouble, and they start
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
choosing, who are they going to hang with and who are they not going to hang with. And that can have a big impact on the trouble they might be getting themselves into. And I just said to him one day, said, this next week, I've got an exercise for you. And he's like, what's that, Dad? And I said, don't say anything. Just hang
Mm,
around your gang and just listen and observe. And then at the end of the week, come back and share with me what you learned. He goes, what? That's crazy. I've got to talk. I go, nope. Just listen and observe, and then ask yourself, how is this impacting you positively or negatively? So, he went and he did, and he listened. And, at the end of that week, Julianne, he didn't even come back with his report because I think
ah,
he understood. He's like, yep,
yeah.
maybe need to make some better decisions here with the folks I'm hanging around. But he was tuned in to their stories. He was listening to them. He was paying attention to them. And that was long before I came into storytelling and storytelling training and that sort of thing. But it was something that was very valuable to me growing up when I found myself in the same predicament. And my father said, just listen for a while and see what you observe. But that's to your point. It's storytelling is such a powerful listening tool. We just,
Yeah.
and in our line of work, we get paid for what goes on between our ears. So we should use them a lot more than our mouth, I think.
And that's so true because when we're connecting with somebody, when we're reacting to somebody and we're having a negative reaction, we want to jump in and say something sometime. Same token, when we're interested in what you're saying right now, I want to jump in and saying something. But years ago, I was doing search for recruiting, and I learned a valuable tool from coming from New York, where we're told to speak fast. Hand our money over when we're going to buy a cup of coffee at a deli. Like, here's my exact change, go, and it's everything is very quick. I learned how to count, because what happened is when I was calling the South and the Midwest, people had a different cadence. So I literally would put my hands on the table and go 1, 2, 3, and then jump in. So it's finding the rhythm of what the other individual needs to be experience you too, and meet them halfway, but to pause and see what's needed in this conversation. Does it need me to be doing all the talking, or does it need me just to be still and pause? Because beautiful gifts come out of the sharing when we take a pause and just give a space for somebody to really dig up into themselves and share something they must not normally do.
And the thing about that pause, as awkward as it can be, and it takes a lot of patience on your part to do that, is quite often that person may be telling you something and they're
Mm,
really not getting to the point. And it's
mm.
not that they aren't being honest with you. They can't quite find it, or somewhere in the back of their mind, they're pushing it off. And if you just sit there and let that pregnant pause, and I'm talking 3, 4, 5 seconds that feels like hours, they go, oh, and one more thing. And it's always that one more thing that's so important.
Well, that's a question for my book. I know I'm dating myself, but I encourage everybody to look for Columbo, the old videos of Columbo, which he was a messed up detective, one of the best character actors around. And he always would say he'd be going on the hunt to find the person who did this horrible deed, a murder or something. And at the end of the interview, he'd turn around and say one more question and reveal exactly what was going on. So I think we all have to learn to do that. And your point is, the gold is usually buried. So our jobs as facilitators and as listeners in conversation is to unbury the gold that's there, that's hiding in plain sight, but it takes time.
Uh,
And then you'll be amazed how it changes the relationships.
Okay, let's go on to another one. I'm
Okay.
reading down through this, and I like your tone here. Number 3, hey, take a breath.
Ah, yes. Yes. I made fun of that because we always saying, okay, because I want people to take a breath, not as like a chilled, no offense to the California folks, like West Coast, but just take a breath when you're squished together on trains and you need to get a space, but just take a moment to listen. Don't hit your email response, save it in draft, don't pick up the phone right away. Don't fire the text off. Take a moment, go get a cup of coffee, go get a cup of tea. Just don't do anything. Just stay and pause. I spent way too much time with lawyers. I spent more time listening to managers or staff complaining about something that went wrong. And it's usually because they hit the button. Don't hit the button. That's all I'm going to say. If you get nothing out of this, even if you don't buy, do not hit the button. Pause, breathe, do something for 2 seconds. You will thank yourself. The later in the afternoon you will thank the earlier in the day you for doing that. And I'm only saying it from experience.
God, I know it. I know exactly what you're talking about. And in my older age, I've gotten way better at that. I even get to the point now, Julianne, I'm not even writing those. And I am in my head, but I'm not putting them down on the screen. I've got a buddy out here, great, great friend of mine, Pete Walsh, and he is a family business coach, and he's very, very good at it. And he introduced me to the line many years ago that I loved, which is kind of in line with what you're talking about. Take a breath, or in California, chill. He says, pump the brakes. And I love
Mm,
that. I love that visual. All right, just pump the brakes here. Let's
mhm,
slow it down. Let's think for a minute, and then where are we going to go next with it? So,
mm.
love that. All right, hold on to your inner child. Now, you were saying earlier that you were going to grow up and become very left brain logic, reason driven. You were going to be very serious, maybe frown a little bit when you talk, and not bat an
Never
eye at
happened.
the right,
Never
but
happened.
never. I can tell.
So, yes, we all have these little the whole premise of the book was I started the more I appreciated Queens, not because it was perfect, but then I realized everything has a gift when we look back and say we got something from it. And once you've been shoved together with a lot of people, you have to pay attention to what they're doing. But
Yeah.
the inner child came from all the scenes when we have these voices inside, and there's always somebody, some script from the past, somebody that's egging on us on to say, you know what, if you were really smart right now, you would just yell at them or get into trouble. And we all had kids in class we went to in school that were just sitting back and waiting to see somebody follow their directions and get in trouble. And I wanna use that as a prompt to say sometimes you just have to hold on to that creature and say, "Slow down. This isn't gonna go well." And pay attention to who some of those little characters you're still carrying with you are doing and how they're not helping you. And maybe think about a few, maybe recast a few people and hire some new internal actors that are gonna help you. So, yeah, lots of inspiration from the schoolyard from back then. Some tough characters. Mm,
The schoolyard has changed though, hasn't it? It's online and these kids
mm,
get completely trolled now and some of them absolutely destroyed online and
mhm.
even destroy themselves unfortunately because of the really become a pandemic of what it's doing especially to the young women and girls in our lives. But the boys are subject to it too, going back to this digital distraction and this digital destruction in a lot of respects.
Mhm.
How and I find this too when I am doing some training and coaching and so forth, the 30 somethings and younger in the room have a hard time sharing their stories. I have to really coax it out of them. And when asked their HR leaders or whomever,
Mhm.
why is that? And again, they say it's digital media. They've been,
Mhm.
beat up, bullied online. They're not comfortable being their authentic self and or sharing their stories because of that survival mechanism. They've been brutalized before and they don't want to have that happen in the room, even when you've made that
Oh,
as
yeah.
safe of a room as possible.
I know, and I grew up with that, the earlier version of that, and that's why this work is so important to me. But I do remember a scene. I was invited into a university. My friend runs the communication department, and it was like you're describing, where a lot of the kids were all locked down. They didn't want to share. And then there was the groovy kid in the back with his two buddies. They're all the cool ones, good looking, gorgeous. And they were creating a dynamic for the group. So I had to come back more than once. And I was like, you know what? I've been trained by the nuns. I can break this pod, no problem. And I separated everybody out the next week. And the most amazing thing happened. This young guy was a very talented athlete who had gotten injured, and everything he thought his life was going to be had changed with one accident, one injury, lost his scholarship, lost everything. But in the little group dyad, because I put them into twos right away, just by the luck of the draw, he started to share. And by the time he got through the workshop, he got in front of the room and shared the story. And it brought everyone together because up to that point, he was the one that everyone was uncomfortable with. And then when he shared, he opened up an opportunity for other people to kind of bring it forward. So, but it was, and sometimes it's a gut move. You're just like,
Yeah.
we're going to wing it and just hope for the best. But it ended up being a very important lesson for me that usually if somebody is scared, like you said, or quiet, it's somebody didn't listen to them, abused what they were sharing, and did inappropriate things. But I look at some social media that's for community building. I see a lot of yelling and screaming at each other. It's supposed to be just giving tips about the neighborhood, and it ends up being quite fierce. So one of the things I always think about is think about the implications of your mark. You say something good, you don't know how much great impact it is. But if you say something negative, you don't know what's going on in that person's life. Step away. Your life's not in depending on you making a comment. So less is more, and I think is the thing. And I think I appreciate you bringing that up. It's more important lately than ever to think about that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this yesterday about, being judgmental.
Mm.
And when I sit, the more and more I listen to people, I shut my trap and listen to what's going on, I just hear judgment, judgment, judgment. But then it becomes very meta because now I'm judging them for being judgmental. And I'm like, is there any way to get judgment out of our life? I think it's a biases that we have, and we are going to judge people whether we like it or not, but I guess we have to be aware of it. My question to you is, do you have a way of working around that with people? Like, why is it the age of rage? Because they're judging everything else that's going on around them. How do you help people overcome that, or at least pump the brakes on it a little bit?
A good question. I animate everything, as you've guessed at this point. I talk about figuring out who's writing the script in your head. Is it an elder that really judged you and criticized and used sarcasm to you? And pay attention who's writing the script, because it's going to impact how we're listening to somebody and receiving information. And if you know you're going into certain dynamic in a room with people that you've met before and you're going to be judging, what about preparing for a while and saying, what if I approached it differently? Change the ending, not write the script before I get there. Now, anybody listening could say, oh, that sounds so easy. It's not. It is truly not. But create a storyline, write it down, even a few bullets, and then saying, what if I approached this differently? What if I looked for the good? What if I got curious and asked why? What if I stopped criticizing before the person even got a chance to say something and change? Could be a few minutes, and it could make a big difference to build trust. Now, if you were asking for instant and there has been a negative dynamic, it's not gonna maybe be an instant, but you're going to disrupt the people around you enough and yourself to give it another go. So, and I'm thinking about people in my head that I had to teach myself to do the same thing. And believe it, it works. Time, patience, and do it again.
Well, you and I are of the age that we would listen to music on cassette tapes, right?
Oh my
Memorex
God,
cassette
yes.
tapes, right? You would record them, you'd make your playlists, you would give them to people and whatever. And I kind of equate that story going on in your head, at least in my head, to that Memorex tape. All right, so somebody has written a script for me. It may have been when I was a little kid, it could have been an adolescent, it could have been college, it could have been yesterday. And now that Memorex tape is playing in my head. And the only way that I'm going to get to stop is I either have to erase it or just record over the top of it. Like, acknowledge that that script is playing, but if I'm going to get through this conversation, or might even be a confrontation, I've got to rewind, and I've got to either erase or just simply tape over that a new script or narrative that is going to be more productive in that conversation with me and them.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, there's a book that came to mind. John Steinbeck wrote The Pearl years ago, and he would write how the character would hear music in his soul and his head in different situations. And I think we have to, like you said, what's the script? What's the tune we're playing? What's the song? Like the score, is it a war song or is it something peaceful? But the whole thing about conflict, it's not that we're not going to have confrontations or conflict or edgy conversation, but think about what success looks like. If you can practice being heard and practice the same thing we learn in storytelling is one person speaks, one person listens, say something appreciative, acknowledge. Don't have to agree. Sometimes we don't agree, but just acknowledge that you per the individual. And that was one big lesson of doing employee relations. I didn't actively seek employer relations, but when I was doing it, it was the act of hearing somebody and then having to figure out what do I do with this information that made a big difference. So yeah, thanks.
And you use that line. I mean, it seems like it's pretty standard, and it seems to work really well. Is after somebody tells you what's on their mind, you say, "Okay, so what I heard was," and
Mm-hmm.
then you share that out, and then they say, "Yeah, Julianne, you got it, except for this one part. That's not what I meant."
Exactly.
And you're like, "Oh, okay, well, what did you mean?"
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and then they clarify their position, but they feel respected, right? It
Mm-hmm.
just comes out of pure respect that you took the time to listen and even articulate back to them what you believe you heard.
And I do believe most of us want to try.
Yeah.
And we're a little nervous and we're stuck and we think, oh, this hasn't gone well before in a group meeting or a session. And I know you and I, when we started to do Zoom, we had experiences of being in offices. Not that that was always roses in the garden, but it was that you could at least get out of your chair, go and have a side by side conversation, walk down the hallway, walk out. But you have to figure out offline moments and get yourself off of group chats and group emails. Go one to one, even pick up the phone, which
No,
is
not pick
oh,
up
I
the phone.
swear. I'm telling you, it's magical. You hear the voice, you hear the cadence, and you're not writing what you think the person is
Yeah.
saying. And it can just be a deal changer. So make that the new cutting edge thing that you try today.
But what about the argument, Julianne, that people are so busy they don't want to get a phone call from me?
I know. Well, give them a heads up for saying, "Can you?" Ask them because you don't wanna catch them off guard and have the wrong moment. I've done that, trust, because I was like, "Oh, let me just do it now." But if you give them a heads up and, kind of just prepare, "I just wanna run something by you and clarify," it helps. And I've like you, my situations where I thought I had an assumption about somebody was doing something, somebody was funding something, and I found out I was incorrect. Picking up the phone, solve things in minutes that would have been back and forth emails, and it wouldn't have felt right.
Yeah.
So it is a time saver. And magical. And then just doing this, the whole Zoom, the whole audio of being able to see body language, to see how somebody's receiving information is a real gift.
Well, yeah. I
So
mean,
take it live when you
I
can.
mean, emails and texts, they're so one dimensional that when you start reading
Mhm.
what they're writing, you're already rewriting a story in your head about what you believe their emotional state is at that point, and you don't know. You're just completely making it up. They could be smiling and laughing when they send you a little joke email, but you don't know that. And you take it from a script already running in your head and you get offended by it. And you're like, well, what the hell? And like, well, whoa, wait, pump the brakes, take a breath, you know, talk to the people.
And And I've responded to my own text without realizing a few times. And then another person say, that was you." Say, "Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to hear more." And that was your response because there's been a gap in time since you've written. And you just look at your phone and you're like, "Oh, well, okay. At least you knew I was happy, to hear from you."
That's
But,
beautiful.
we make stupid mistakes, but you have to play it and just have some fun with it too. But,
All right, Julianne, the last one, then I'll let you go. I
uh,
know you're busy. It's
no,
number seven. Play number
what is that?
seven. You gotta eat. What's that about?
Absolutely. You know what? Life is better with a snack. So and you can learn a lot by just having a meal or a coffee or sitting with somebody. I learned I had multiple, nationalities I went to school with in Queens, and I'm gonna use one that I quote in the book, Cuban family. I was invited to my friend's house. The mother was at one end of the table, the daughters and the friends were interpreting. They were, Spanish to me, and I found that at that table, that mother was more worried about me coming into the household than my mother was me going to visit them because she was worried about all the same things. Are you good in school? Are you going to study? Are you going to do good? You're not going to get my kid into trouble or put in stuff. So when you sit down and have a meal, and I'm still dreaming of this food because even though I eat Cuban food and everything, I can never find this home cooking that she had. You learn about the why and what's important to people, what's special. And the whole art of creating a meal and inviting somebody into your house or your space is a deal changer. It really does help people relax. And I do use that on my own in events, and then with colleagues, we create food experiences to sit down and talk, and either somebody brings somebody some food they've made, or we just bring something just to enjoy and relax and have some fun. Do you cook? Do
Well,
you
then,
cook?
do I cook? I do, and I like to cook. My wife is an incredible cook.
Mm.
And, she took care of us and the kids, and it was always good. But then the kids grew up and moved away. And then Michelle and I were often out in restaurants. We're both working, and we're like,
Hmm.
oh, let's just grab something. I'll bring something home or whatever. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And that shut all that business down. And she started cooking and just trying different recipes and whatever. And she makes amazing stuff. And she pulls it up online. She
Hmm.
goes, cooking's easy. I don't know why people think it's so hard. And she just gets stuff online. So I don't cook nearly as much as I used to because she does such an amazing job with it. And I don't think she likes me messing up our new kitchen. And I will tell you, I make a killer omelet.
I knew you were going to say that. I
Did you
just knew
really?
it. I did. I did.
No
I don't know
kidding.
what it was. I swear, honest truth.
Well, here's one for you. I also
Okay.
have an invention called the Amalako. And
What?
Caden, our young son who edits my show for us, our youngest son, he's 30 now, but our youngest son, he
Okay.
knows what I'm talking about when I'm saying the Amalako. And here's what it is. I got to really patent this. You make an omelet, and one day I'm looking at my omelet, and I go, that omelet looks exactly like a taco. And I go, well, wait a minute. What if I make like a cheese crisp, wrap it over the top of that omelet, and then you can eat it like your pizza walking right down the
Ah,
street of Manhattan? You can take your omelet or omelako, omelet taco, anywhere you want. And I'm telling
oh
you
my
what,
God.
they are a hit. Now, whenever we have family over the holidays, it's like, Park, you making omelakos this morning? And so I got to bust out
Ah,
omelakos.
but that's beautiful, and it's funny. It's like I grew up with my best friend. I saw her. She moved to Pittsburgh recently, and it was all about the food, what I was bringing, and got on the plane. It was like, okay, I hope all this gets past security. It was all good stuff, baked goods. And And then what she was making, and then when I was getting back, I thought my suitcase would be emptier. No, it came back with more stuff. And then when I see my brother, he's a brilliant cook in vegetables. It's all about sending pictures back and recipes. So it's the most beautiful thing you can do. And anybody who cooks for me, they're my best friend.
All right. Well, the next time you and your Irish husband, who, by the way,
Ah,
you probably just built your storytelling skills 10x by marrying an Irishman. I know I got a
oh
lot of
my Lord.
Irishmen in my life too. Come out to Arizona. Come on up to northern
Oh,
Arizona.
I
We're
would love
south
it.
of Flagstaff.
Okay.
You can stay with us. In the morning, I'm going to serve you an amalako. In the evening, I'm going to make you spaghetti.
Oh my God, you are my best friend for sure. Everybody else has been downgraded. Okay. Listen, it's a joy. I love following your work. Thanks for spreading the word about story in every shape or form, and it's a blast.
Well, Julianne, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm so glad we finally connected after all these years of being on LinkedIn and being LinkedIn pals to finally have you here on the show. So I appreciate that.
Cheers and thanks. All the best.
Thanks for listening and sharing this edition of the Business of Story. If I can help you and your people grow as more confident and compelling storytellers, please shoot me a note to park@businessofstory.com. Or you can start your training right now with our ABTs of Agile Communications micro training course at businessofstory.com/ABT. The ABT is indeed the foundation for all compelling and persuasive storytelling. I'd like to give a big thank you to Caden Howell for editing our show, to Darius Holbert for composing the Business of Story music, and to Marissa Hill for her remarkable marketing and community management. Please join me next Monday when you will meet Glenn Ginsberg, president of QU, a highly decorated global ad agency that creates story marketing for some of the most beloved entertainment franchises, including Warner Brothers, Disney, Universal Pictures, Activision, MGA, and more. You will learn how to curate your stories so you can extend their reach and impact across all of your social channels and platforms. So until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.
Something wrong?
My task is not completed yet. Where is Dr. Smith?
He's inside the ship. Why?
There is much we have to discuss.
Considering how badly I treated our mechanical friend, the penalty for his forgiveness is not so bad. Here he comes now.
Are you ready, Dr. Smith?
At your service, sir.
Proceed. You may apply more effort, Dr. Smith. My skin is not sensitive.
That's what you say.
And do not miss any spots. If it is worth doing, it is worth doing well.
I compute.